Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're unpacking the fascinating psychology of abundance and the specific physical traits of what the source materials call high-value body language. Now, we aren't looking at superficial posture tricks today. No fake it till you make it stuff. Instead, we're objectively decoding the physical architecture of authority. We're going to look at the exact 7 signs the source material identifies that translate deep internal beliefs into a commanding physical presence. So let's get right to the foundational question this whole framework poses. Why do some men seem untouchable in high-stress situations? The source text uses this exact question as its hook, and it's absolutely brilliant. Think about it. When a crisis hits, why do some people just shrink while others project this unshakable calm? Well, the articles we're analyzing argue that this isn't an act. It's actually rooted in cognitive control under stress. This physical control is basically the outward manifestation of an incredibly strong internal mindset. It's a signal to the world that they don't need external validation to survive the moment. They choose their response. But to understand how this works physically, the text points out that we first have to look inward. Section 1. The internal core. Building power from the inside out. So the core premise of this framework is that physical authority is not something you can just paste on. You don't just, stand up a little straighter and suddenly command a room. It actually starts in the mind, specifically with an internal locus of control. This is the deeply held belief that your own actions determine your outcomes. And what's super interesting is how the text applies this. It specifically notes that a person with this trait just doesn't rely on external validation, like, say, social media reactions to feel powerful. They aren't looking outside themselves to figure out if they're succeeding. And when you aren't constantly scanning the room or glued to your smartphone for approval, your physical presence naturally becomes a lot more grounded and way less anxious. Building directly on that is the third sign from the text's list, self-efficacy. Now, while the locus of control is about where you source your validation, self-efficacy is defined here as the deep belief that your actions actually shape the world around you. The text draws this direct, fascinating line between an internal belief and your external body language. It states that the psychological trait literally projects natural leadership. And it makes sense, right? When you genuinely believe your actions carry weight, your physical movements just lose that hesitation. You're not asking for permission with your posture, you simply move with the quiet certainty of someone who knows they can affect change. The final pillar of this internal core, which is the 7th sign in the overall framework, is cognitive independence. The source material describes this as the ability to remain completely unbothered by popular trends and the noise of the crowd. And let's be real, in a world that is constantly screaming for our attention and telling us exactly what we should care about, choosing cognitive independence over that noise is framed as a massive display of psychological abundance. Physically, this looks like someone who isn't easily startled, or distracted, or swayed. Their focus is completely internal, which perfectly sets up the guiding philosophy mentioned in the text. Purpose over people. So the crucial point is how this exact quote from the source material ties the entire internal core together. Now, I know it might sound a bit stark at first glance, but the text uses this phrase to explain high emotional regulation. If your primary driver is a deeply held internal purpose, rather than the constantly shifting opinions of the people around you, you naturally become less emotionally volatile. You're anchored. When your purpose leads, the physical result is this calm, emotionally regulated presence that just isn't easily capsized by social pressure. This internal stability dictates how a person actually moves and acts in the real world. Which brings us to section 2, action and reaction. Let's look at the behavioral mechanics of discipline. So, how does this internal mindset actually execute action? Well, it starts with automaticity. This introduces the 2nd sign. The text defines this as moving with a disciplined consistency that is entirely ingrained. It operates subconsciously. Have you ever watched someone who is an absolute master at their craft? They don't have to think about every single movement, right? It just flows. The framework applies this exact concept to discipline itself. The physical presence of authority comes from the fact that the person isn't trying to remember how to stand or how to react calmly. It's automatic. It's their default setting. And that leads to one of the most striking distinctions made in the source material. Take a second to really process this quote directly from the text. Discipline is an identity, not a performance for show. This is the dividing line the framework draws between genuine authority and someone who's just faking it. Think about it. If you're performing discipline for an audience, you are eventually going to slip up when the stress gets too high. Why? Because performance requires a constant, exhausting, conscious effort. But if discipline is your identity, if it's just who you are through that automaticity we were just talking about, then your physical body language remains utterly consistent. Whether you're on a stage in front of thousands or entirely alone in a room, nothing changes. This brilliantly illustrates the sixth sign on our list, System 2 dominance. The source material uses this concept to describe the psychological ability to pause and refine decisions. Instead of just reacting instantly to an immediate emotional spike or a sudden crisis, this person possesses the psychological brake pedal required to slow down. And that brake pedal, that is the exact mechanism behind that untouchable calm we talked about at the very beginning of the explainer. When a high-stress event occurs, they hit the brakes on the immediate panic-driven response, and they steer right into clarity. To really wrap our heads around what the text is arguing, let's contrast emotional reactivity with refined decisions. Physically, what does emotional reactivity look like? We've all seen it. It's rushed, erratic breathing, tense shoulders, jerky movements. It's basically letting the environment completely dictate your physical state. On the flip side, the text argues that System 2 dominance projects as a literal pause, a deep breath, a grounded stance. By choosing not to react immediately, the individual is physically demonstrating that they are in control of the timeline, not the stressor. Moving into Section 3, the external presentation, interacting with a hyper-connected world. We've covered the internal mind and how it processes action, but how in the world do you maintain that internal control when society is literally engineered to distract you? This brings us to the fourth sign, contrasting the dopamine trap against master discipline. Look, in our hyper-connected world, instant approval is cheap. You post something, you get a like. The framework suggests that someone who constantly chases these little micro hits of dopamine on their smartphone physically appears anxious and needy. Conversely, mastering delayed gratification physically projects patience and long-term vision. It shows everyone around you that you're playing a much longer game than just the immediate moment. And that plays right into the fifth sign, selective self-presentation. The text explicitly decodes this by contrasting image, which is your public display, against intimacy, which is your private life. According to the source material, a person exhibiting the psychology of abundance makes the very strategic choice to keep their private life private. Why? Because they value actual intimacy way more than the projection of an image. They don't feel the need to leverage their personal life for public points. By holding things back, they naturally create this aura of quiet, self-contained authority. They simply aren't laying everything out there for public consumption. Let's move to and see how this builds the complete puzzle. We've unpacked 7 distinct signs from the inside out. Number 1, an internal locus of control, where you rely on yourself for validation. 2, automaticity, where discipline is an ingrained habit. 3, self-efficacy, the deep belief you shape the world. 4, avoiding the dopamine trap of instant gratification. 5, selective self-presentation to protect your true intimacy. 6, System 2 dominance, allowing you to pause rather than react emotionally. And 7, cognitive independence from the loud noise of the crowd. When you combine all 7 of those signs, you arrive at the ultimate synthesis provided by the source material. The less he chases validation, the more the world wants his. It is the ultimate paradox of abundance outlined in these texts. By completely abandoning the desperate chase for external approval and building power entirely from the inside out, the individual naturally begins to draw that very validation toward them. The physical architecture of authority, therefore, isn't about pushing your dominance onto other people at all. It's actually about being so internally anchored that you become a center of gravity yourself. Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought derived directly from the text we explored today. I want you to look at the structures of your own habits and actions. Is your discipline an identity? Is it something ingrained deeply within your internal locus of control? Or is it just a performance for the crowd, waiting to crack when the stress gets a little too high? It's a pretty powerful lens through which to view not just our body language, but how we govern our own minds. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.